in necessarily adding some of those teams, or do you think they should have gone for maybe a slightly better football program, even if it would have created maybe some parity in the middle, or even caused like a team to possibly upset one of the higher ranked teams? Or are you okay with how the conference from top to bottom is shaping?
I know I'd be okay with it if I was getting a small sliver of the amount of money they're making with Rutgers and Maryland in the conference.
Touche.
The problem is, and we can talk about how awful Rutgers is, and I've been to Rutgers when there was literally only like 6 people in the stadium. I've been to Maryland where there was literally only like 6 people in the stadium. But the money that they bring in, and also, to be fair, their basketball programs are at least respectable. And that's something the Big Ten at the time really wanted to expand. And whenever you have a chance to bring Maryland into your basketball conference, you have to take advantage of that. So it's obvious looking now. It's like, well, yeah, if I knew Rutgers was going to be this piss poor, then I wouldn't have them necessarily on. But also, you have to remember they also expanded and brought in Nebraska, and maybe people can still talk crap about Nebraska. I sure did, because I didn't think Nebraska was going to be as good as everyone thought they would be. But still, having Nebraska in that other side of the division has done a lot more good than people kind of remember. They've been to the division the conference championship, and they've at least kind of balanced the divisions at least a little bit as far as prestigious schools go, and that's important for the conference. I don't know if the Big Ten is going to expand more anytime soon. That being said, now with the New York market covered, they go all the way from New York and the East Coast all the way to Lincoln, Nebraska. I mean, the amount of money that they have across those regions is impressive. Do you think they would now be able to kind of just dip into wherever they want? I would admit that it would be kind of silly if they didn't try to at least kind of wander into the Virginia area a little bit. But I mean, there's a lot of rumors you hear every day. I mean, some people want Syracuse, some people want Virginia, some people want Pitt, some people want Virginia Tech. I've even heard people as far as trying to get Georgia Tech to come in, which I think is a little far fetched.
Yeah, that's kind of like I could see Pitt sneaking into the Big Ten, but I think the biggest question is Notre Dame. Like, yeah, they got the ACC thing, but realistically, they had a pretty decent year. And you just look at the prestige of Notre Dame. It's in Indiana. Indiana had a great year this year. If you could manage to bring in Notre Dame and then put them in the opposite conference, the opposite division of an Ohio State, do you think that makes the Big Ten rivals with the SEC? I mean, like on a national stage?
From a perspective of big names, absolutely. Now, some people don't know this and aren't as familiar, but Notre Dame is part of the hockey conference when it comes to the Big Ten. So there already is a little bit of, I guess you could say,
flirtation,
coordination. Yeah,
ACC got it all. Everything else locked up.
Whatever word you want to use, but it's hard to imagine what it would really take for the football team to be a part of it. And from what my understanding, what I've heard is Notre Dame wants to feel special. So what they want is different rules for their football program than for the rest of their teams. I think if the football team was left out of it, Notre Dame would be totally happy to join the Big Ten for all the other sports. Maybe basketball, because I think basketball really does like being the ACC. But all those other sports that people maybe don't think about as much would love to be in the Big Ten. The Big Ten, from what I understand, is telling them, no, like it's all or nothing when it comes to us. Hockey, again, is still a little bit weird because hockey also has a lot of different rules and conferences on their own front. But they're saying, no, that's not how this is going to work. If they did join, obviously the West becomes a lot more notable. I mean, obviously Iowa plays good football, but when it comes to recruiting, Notre Dame will be able to go across the country year in and year out and recruit in places that teams in the Midwest usually aren't able to, whether that's Florida, whether that's California. They can do that. And people sleep on Indiana as a state, But Indiana has some really great football, all the way from Purdue, obviously, to Bloomington, where the Hoosiers have had a really good season as well.
I think the other issue with Notre Dame football is I don't think they would want to share that NBC deal. So I think that's kind of why they stray away from the conference.
True. Right now they're making all that money on their own.
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time, I could, people would maybe salivate at the opportunity of how much money they would bring in for the Big Ten conference. But you're right. And what I really think is going to end up happening is for Notre Dame to join a conference, and I don't even know if it would take one time. It would maybe have to take 2 or 3 times. But you saw a situation, at least if we're talking about football here, where they were left out of the college football playoff being undefeated. So they won all their games and they were left out because, let's just say, 4 Power 5 champions got in undefeated. And if that happens once or twice, that becomes now an issue. Like if the committee already pretty much says if Notre Dame loses more than 1 game, they're out of it. But if they went undefeated and didn't get in, especially if they didn't get in over like a 1-loss team, like what would happen if
that would be a tough call?
Yeah, what happens if a 1-loss, Pac-12 champion? And maybe that's not the best example because the Pac-12 is mistreated.
Yeah.
But let's just say a 1-loss Georgia team that lost in the SEC championship versus a Notre Dame team. I mean, that's an interesting debate.
Yeah, I think college football would have to, I don't know if they would turn down that Notre Dame national audience in the playoff if they were presented with that situation still.
Plus,
right,
you got to.
I mean, who wouldn't want to watch another primetime Notre Dame massacre?
That's true.
Do you really want to see Clemson just dismantle them on national television again?
I don't, but my grandparents would.
I love Notre Dame.
My grandparents would watch.
I would watch it just to see them get blown out.
Of Dabo Swinney saying that they basically prepared for Alabama that entire time between the before the playoff games, that they spent about a week preparing for Notre Dame, and then they spent the rest of their time focusing on Alabama because they knew that they were going to beat Notre Dame.
Makes sense.
Notre Dame's kind of soft, let's be honest.
All right, Corey, so before we wrap it up and let you go, why don't you give us like a low-key bowl game, outside of the playoffs, outside of Penn State, that you're looking forward to watching, a good matchup?
Do that for you. There's, when I first saw the slate, I was actually kind of disappointed with some of the games. I think the Bulls kind of messed up with some of their choices. But there's a couple of really good ones that I want to quickly highlight. One that people will probably not really think about or even really give that much attention to, but they should, is actually this weekend, and that is Boca Raton Bowl between SMU and Florida Atlantic.
I like the accent.
Really fun to watch. Yeah, it's going to be a high-scoring game, and thank you. I wouldn't be surprised if this one is plus 60 total.
Cool.
And it's going to be really exciting to see what Florida Atlantic does now without Lane Kiffin. But also SMU's offense is really exciting. So if you have a chance to watch that, I think that one's on 3:30 on ABC. That should be a really exciting one this weekend. The Las Vegas Bowl between Boise State and Washington. I said this on my podcast on Monday. Basically, everyone on the staff is somehow related to Boise State in one way or another.
My cousin is Andy Avalos, defensive coordinator for Oregon.
And I said this is a Chris Peterson Bowl.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, it is a Boise State Bowl. So that one's going to be a great one. Washington, from what I've seen, has been very inconsistent. If this wasn't Peterson's last game, I'd be taking Boise State. But with Peterson's last game, I'm inclined to kind of lean towards Washington. I feel like all the trick plays that he's ever had in his back pocket is just going to be one just trick play after another. Like, we're just going to throw 60 trick plays in. But when you look at the other great matchups, real quick, the Texas Bowl between Oklahoma State and A&M, an old Big 12 matchup. A&M has the series lead over them, if I remember correctly. But this is a game where A&M had a really tough schedule this year. And this is one of these teams where you really want to win this game because you think Jimbo Fisher, who's been recruiting really well, can have a really great year next year, but you really want to win this game for the momentum standpoint. So I really like that game. That should be a really exciting game. And obviously Oklahoma State with Chuba Hubbard is really impressive to watch as well. One other one that people are always going to want to choose a Citrus Bowl. I'm going to leave out the Citrus Bowl. There's two more that I actually want to highlight. The Outback Bowl, Minnesota and Auburn. If you haven't had a chance to watch Minnesota's receivers, Rashad Bateman is phenomenal. I haven't seen a guy – I mean, a 50-50 ball doesn't exist for him. When the ball's thrown up there, it's like 90-10. He comes up with most of them. I'm also excited to see Bo Nix play away from Auburn. He's been awful when he isn't playing at home. And it'll be interesting to see what he can do. So I'm really excited to watch that game. I would have been excited to see the Michigan-Alabama game if people were playing and everyone was going to be motivated, but I had my doubts about that. And then one more, and I actually can't exactly remember when it is. And again, it's a little bit under the radar as far as, what people maybe wouldn't expect. And I really can't find it all of a sudden. But, here it is. The Independence Bowl. My goodness. Louisiana Tech, Miami. Miami's got to win this football game. I have some good inside information in Miami. And from what I've heard, the whole program is an absolute dumpster fire. And they have cancer after cancer going on in that entire program. And Louisiana Tech can frickin' score. And it's basically Louisiana Tech versus a Miami team that probably doesn't even want to be there. It's a home game for Louisiana Tech, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if Jamar Smith at quarterback just tears up Miami. So that one's also, people will probably not even think about that, but that's the day after Christmas.
Cool.
I'm really excited to watch Louisiana Tech tear apart an ACC team.
All right, Corey, that's crazy that you have Boise State connection because that's actually how me and Kenny met. Like,
I just started reeling off random Boise State knowledge. And he was like, dude,
small world.
He said the D-line coach is my cousin. I was like, Andy Avalos? He's like, how do you know his name? I was like, bro, I told you, I have a very vast knowledge of Boise State football history.
That's crazy. Yeah, like I said, my buddy played at Idaho for the Vandals.
Okay.
Very one-sided.
And so he's been there, but I have a lot of friends that went to Boise State, a lot of people from all over that area, so it's very familiar to me. The one year my buddy, I guess Idaho went to 2 bowl games when my friend played there, but
hey, that's something.
The one year they played in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, and they're all pissed about it because they didn't even leave the state for a different game.
For their first bowl, and how long they didn't even leave the state.
Like, we got to go to Boise State's house where we never win.
But no, it's there's some disrespect out there, and if your listeners in the Pac-12, I apologize. I can tell you this: in the SEC country, there isn't really much of attention given to anybody outside the SEC. I mean, you just listen at bars and things like that. People just don't even, you hear people talking crap about really historic programs like Nebraska and things like that, and talking about them like that. They don't have football culture and tradition, and then it's just like you don't know what you're talking about. So I would say the SEC is pretty. I mean, they're great. It's a great football country, but they're pretty narrow focus. I would say tunnel visioned on themselves. And for you guys, that means they're not going to give you very much attention until you get it. And I will say, and probably running a little bit longer than you want me to, but
you're good.
Very good.
That's the show. Touchdowns and tangents.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's basically how I live my entire life. One tangent after another.
That's a drop. Thank you.
Real quick, just the Oregon dilemma I've heard lately about the scheduling situation, what Oregon was supposed to do, and they didn't play Auburn, and they only lost to Arizona State, which, by the way, I did stay up for that game, and man, Oregon looked. First off, Johnny Johnson, is that correct?
Johnny Johnson the third.
Oh my goodness, is he fun to watch? And obviously, I know Juwan Johnson, who transferred from Penn State, but Johnny Johnson the third is. I would watch him. I would stay up until 4 a.m. to watch him play. Like, he's lightning in a bottle. But that Arizona State game, Oregon looked awful. And my point is, hey, you didn't have to beat Auburn to get into the playoff. You just had to beat Arizona State. But fine, if you want to play Auburn, that's great for you. Everyone kind of forgets that Oregon had a really good opportunity to win that game, and really should have won that game. And that isn't talked about enough. It wasn't like Oregon shouldn't schedule Auburn. It was just Oregon literally has to play better for like another 15 seconds, and they win that game. And then we don't even have this conversation.
Yeah,
so,
They gave up that touchdown late, and then they got the ball back
Right.
after that and messed it up.
Right.